UFP, the United Federation of Podcasts.
Infinite diversity.
Long and prosper, and welcome to Infinite Diversity, a Star Trek Universe podcast here on the United Federation of Podcast Network. I'm your host for today, Justin Oser, and joining me are my co-hosts, the people that reproduce very quickly. That sounds really bad, but Chrissie De Clerck-Szilagyi and Brandon Shamatala. Well, it at least relates to what we're talking about today.
Then I'm on
Chrissie,
the
how are you
on the
doing?
side that reproduces slowly, since I have no children.
Okay, so pre-Trouble with Edward Tribble. Yeah.
I'm doing
But how
well.
are you doing anyway? That was weird. I know.
Well. No, that was good. No, I'm doing all right. I will say I'm doing very well for a sentimental reason. Not about horses, for those of you that listened to last week's episode. But I've spent the last couple
because
of weeks...
you like breakfast cereal.
I do like breakfast cereal. I do not like meat in my breakfast cereal. That's a different issue.
Or spicy ranch.
Oh, God, no. No. So I've spent the last couple of weeks going through some really awesome boxes of Star Trek cards that my husband found for me to replace ones that I had, let's say, inadvertently, inappropriately gotten rid of when I was trying to get rid of childhood stuff and thought I would not care anymore. And so that's been really fun. And so hold on to your stuff, even if you can. Even if you think it's not something that's necessarily going to be super important. You never know. And actually, if you take my advice, you end up on hoarders. So don't do that. But don't throw away Star Trek stuff.
Not everything. Select the things that you keep with you, yeah. But not everything in your life, including everything.
Yeah, keep the Star Trek stuff.
But that's great. But that's great that you're able to get some of those trading cards. Brandon, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Just give me a second to poop out this baby.
God.
It's not pooping, really, but okay.
Well, who knows?
I don't understand. I don't
they're
understand the
coming out of you
birthing
in the
process of
container.
tribbles. I just don't understand it. Like, even in TOS, I just do not understand it.
Makes sense.
They're like cell
That's pretty
division
weird.
is what it's like.
Yes.
It's like rapid
It
cell
kind of
division.
feels like, well, they're born pregnant. It's inside of them, and then it pays not to think about it too much, even in TOS.
Agreed.
But okay. Besides that, how are you doing?
I'm doing really good here. I just had the most delicious cookies that my daughter made for me, peanut butter and Nutella.
Ooh,
So good.
Ooh, awesome.
And I got a Mike's Hard Lime, and I'm getting myself stoked to discuss probably my least favorite episode of Star Trek ever.
All right. Yeah, I can't wait to discuss this.
I absolutely hate this episode.
I know you hate it, but we're going to make it interesting for you. Just like you made the Mud short interesting for me, Brandon, even though it's one of my least favorite things in Star Trek.
Chrissie made that interesting. That was That was all Chrissie. She brought up the good question.
Yes.
I'll take credit for that.
We'll see. Yeah. All right. So, yes, listeners, today we were talking about the short trek, The Trouble with Edward, the one about the Tribbles. So, Chrissie, let me just start out with your thoughts. Maybe what you thought of it at the time, and maybe what you think of it now. Where do you begin?
No. My initial thought at the time was, and this continues to be important to me with this episode, as fun as this was, as weird and cringy and all of that it was, H. John Benjamin would have been a perfect Cyrano Jones. And that is a lost opportunity, and they could have just done something like that. And So that was my first impression, was that he's cast incorrectly, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. But I mean, do you feel any differently? I know aside, but like about the episode. It sounds like you kind of enjoy it, but think it's really weird.
Yeah, I like it. The undermining of the canon bit that everyone complains about, I have some issues with that, but I can work my way around it, as we'll see as we go through the episode here.
The underlining of the what bit?
The undermining of the canon with the Tribbles.
Oh.
Yeah. But it's very much a John Benjamin piece. I don't know how much he was involved in writing this. I know he's not listed as a writer, but I don't...
But it feels like a good thing for him. Like H. John Benjamin is someone I'm not as familiar with some of the things that he's probably more well known for, like Archer. I've seen some of Bob's Burgers, and I think he's hilarious in that. But the thing where I've seen him the most is actually a lesser known animated comedy called Home Movies from the early 2000s. You've seen Home Movies? I love Home Movies. It is I love it. It's one of my favorite things ever. And I'm just going to talk about it a little bit. Sorry, Brandon. We'll get why you hate the episode in a minute. But one of the reasons I was excited about him in this one is Home Movies is, I think, a really hilarious show about these kids that are trying to make their movies. These movies are god-awful, but they have fun making them, and it's hilarious like how they put it together, but it's also about their lives and what goes on with them, with their friends and at school and stuff. And at the school is this soccer coach, Coach McGurk, who's played by H. John Benjamin, and he is like the worst person in the world. I don't know if I would go, but he's just like a terrible person, but there's some way in which he plays it that I think is absolutely hilarious. And he's like, in a way, he's kind of like Edward Larkin in that series. Like, he's trying to do this stuff, but like it really doesn't go well, and he's just creating like all kinds of messes and issues. So I think he was hilarious in that. I think he's hilarious in this one. The Trouble with Edward is one that at the time I loved it. I thought it was hilarious. Didn't care like, what it might contradict or whatever. I thought as a piece of humor in Star Trek, it was one of my favorite things because I love this kind of absurd humor. So it worked for me in a way that the Mud Short did not. But
it's so
did you want
weird
to say anything?
To me because this type of humor latches onto you, and it like not latches on you, but you latch onto it. But like Lower Decks does not. I mean, like, this is like
it does not.
I don't know, like,
but you know what? Like it, and it's interesting to think about because they are very contrasting types of humor, right? And one works for you that doesn't work for me. The other one works for me that doesn't work for you. But like one of the things for me that can make something funny is if it's unexpected or surprising. And for me, something like The Trouble with Edward was totally unexpected and surprising. And I still laugh at it when I rewatch it because I'm like, this is hilarious because it's so absurd. They've taken it so to the limit. And for me, something like Lower Decks or The Escape Artist feels like the kind of humor that I see coming from a mile away, and so is not unexpected or surprising and is not funny for me. Like, it's not funny in like how they construct it or what they say. And I feel like, especially with Lower Decks, what happens for me is that I feel like it's this whole group of people that are acting in a way that I think is terrible and that doesn't work for me. And The Trouble with Edward is about this one guy. Well, I mean, we'll talk about it because I think there's blame to spread around for what happens here. But this one guy basically is the misfit, and he's doing these crazy things. And I think because it's so absurd, and the way H. John Benjamin delivers the lines, I think is hilarious. I love how he does it. But yeah, it's a fascinating thing because I think for you, Brandon, this does not work at all. This is very much something that you don't like. And it's interesting because it's something I very much love.
And I'm glad that you love it. I really am glad that you love it. So, I could appreciate enjoying like humor that comes out of nowhere. Like the hardest I've ever laughed in my life, there's twice. And one of them was in this season 2 episode of The Simpsons when Homer goes to buy this vibrating chair, and it like cuts into this whole 2001 sequence and stuff. Like I was literally on the floor laughing when that happened. And the other was in, I think it was Robin Hood Men in Tights. And there's like a blind character in the show. Yes. And when they go to a battle, he just shouts out "hoo-ah." And like right at that time was when Scent of a Woman came out, and Al Pacino was blind, and he's like says "hoo-ah." That's right. And I'm like, what a brilliant little joke to something. You know,
it's funny because both of those, I remember both of those, and I think those are funny.
Yeah, those are hilarious. So yeah,
you cannot go wrong with Mel Brooks. And I'll bring this back to Star Trek because Patrick Stewart is in Robin Hood Men in Tights. So there you go.
That's right.
It's basically just Cupid, right? So
it's like, I mean, it was around the same.
Actually, it was
the same time.
Yeah.
They're taking advantage of that. But go ahead, Brandon, because I know you want to talk about the issues you have with this one. I'm sure.
So yeah, like so the first time that I watched this, I'm like, this is fine, it's okay. But it with every subsequent watch, this just pissed me off more and more. Right, this episode, and the reason why is I don't like this kind of humor, this uncomfortable humor. Right, I really don't like this. Like this whole staff meeting. Like people don't talk that way in real life. You know, the way that staff meeting was going on.
They don't, but like the interesting thing is like I like things like this exactly because it's not something that would happen in real life. It's something that's taken to the absurd end. That's actually what I like about it, is its disconnection from reality.
So that's what it gets me. So if this is something that's taken to the absurd level, right, then to me, okay, so as the Star Trek fan and what's important to me, this clearly cannot be canon, right? This clearly can't be what happened, because if they're taking something and they're making it absurd, then this is clearly not what happened.
I think there's a different definition of canon, though, because I think if you talk to people that create Star Trek and that create stories like this, canon, maybe it's a little different for some franchises, but for Star Trek, canon is what you see on screen. It doesn't mean that it's consistent or has continuity with anything else. It just means it's on screen. So there's not, I think people have this association like canon means that, it's consistent and doesn't contradict. It doesn't. Canon means it's on screen, so it's as a guide for when you're writing things and going. So it is canon, I think, absolutely. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to work for you, or that you can't just be like, I don't like that thing, or I think it's inconsistent. Okay. But it is canon because it's on screen.
Lower Decks is on screen.
Yeah, but Lower Decks is not
canon
too.
I think
it's not canon.
I think it is.
The thing with that though is like, okay, so but where do you draw the line on that? Okay, so if we had,
you draw the line at whether it's on screen or not.
Okay, so let's write an episode. Let's say there's an episode that comes out, right? A short trek that discusses Wesley Crusher's twin brother, who was on the Enterprise for 7 years. Right, and actually,
that's an official production. That is canon.
No, it's not. Like, it
yes,
just
it
wouldn't
is.
make any sense.
Again, it has nothing to do with
continuity, though, right?
Oh, I would have a problem with it if it came out too. But if it's on screen, it's canon.
Yes. People would definitely have a problem.
Anyway,
and they would definitely just debate it and dispute it and whatnot. So
I'm sure, but that doesn't change the fact that it's on screen, so it's part of official.
So how do you is it like James Tiberius Robert Kirk or what?
See, those are the things that don't. That's just it. Like, you don't need explanations for stuff when they're trying to establish.
That's what I'm saying.
You don't need explanations, but it's on screen.
Right.
That sequence happened in some way or shape or form, and you can try to explain it if you can. But that's canon. It happened. But regardless of that, let's kind of set aside the things where you feel like they're a conflict. Let's say that everything that was in this was in continuity. Would it still be the case that it's just the kind of humor that doesn't work for you?
Yeah. Yes, and actually, like, so I have come to my own definition of this episode and where this episode fits in continuity, right? And it works perfectly fine with me. And I've talked to you guys about it in the past. I've talked about it elsewhere before. Okay, so in my perception of this episode is a flashback. The whole episode is being told in flashback by Lucero on the stand at her trial at the end.
Okay.
And she is lying her face off the entire time. That is how I've come to determine.
That's a valid interpretation, I think.
That is how I've determined it. Because she's sitting here saying the whole episode is about everybody telling her how awesome she is. Even Pike is saying, "You are so awesome."
Oh, sure.
Like,
good point. Yeah.
Like, how did she get to captain from whatever position she was in? Because we have Una, right, who was his first officer, right? So she just skipped a whole bunch of ranks to get here.
She could be a commander in sciences.
Something like that.
But I kind of like what you talk about. And again, like I've said before, no matter what happens or what you see on screen, you can always find a way to make it consistent or in continuity with other stuff. So if it is a flashback and it's being told from her point of view and she messed up and she's like, you know what? It's this guy. He's dead and you can't talk to him, but it was his fault.
It was all his fault.
Like, in a certain way, it makes sense.
She's supposed to be this awesome captain. Everybody loves her, and they've shown this whole thing as everybody loves her. She's getting along with everybody. And in 2 weeks, one completely incompetent Starfleet officer completely destroys her career. Like, I don't know, like just.
And you know what? For me, like thinking about it that way as a flashback, and she's lying about it and all that makes it even funnier because I think there is something funny sometimes about someone telling a story about how things are, and I especially like it, when you see something in a show where people are telling different stories. And this is why I forget which episode it was, but the Lower Decks one where they're telling like the story of like what happened on the secret mission. It's from all these different perspectives. I love that kind of stuff. And that's the reason that episode worked for me. But I think it makes it even funnier just thinking about someone just concocting this bizarre, absurd story for what happened. Like something happened, Tribbles got out, and like now it's menacing Klingons and evacuating a whole civilization and all that stuff. And it's like, it wasn't me. It was that guy, and you can't even talk to him. I love it. That's great. I hadn't you probably mentioned it before and I'd forgotten about it. But
yeah, no, I remember you talking
works.
about her as an unreliable narrator.
Yes,
which is good. That's what
and she totally could be. Yeah.
The only thing they could reconcile would be whether or not those messages were sent about her being dumb and bad at her job.
Yes.
Yeah.
And his past service
and
record.
it could be maybe. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. He's kind of passed around or whatever. But yeah, I really like that. So I didn't necessarily want to get into a lot of like, what's funny or not in this. I had some questions that I wanted to ask that I think are interesting because they talk about it a little bit in this one where I think Lucero is asking like, are they intelligent? And, Larkin completely misunderstands it and thinks that he can make them brain dead to paper over the problem. But something I think in the different episodes we've had, so we've had the Trouble with Tribbles, we've had more Troubles in the animated series, we've had Trials and Tribulations in Deep Space Nine, and then this episode. I don't know if we've ever answered the question, are Tribbles sentient? So what do you guys think based on what we know? Chrissy?
No.
think they aren't?
Well,
why do you think that?
Let's define sentience.
Okay,
oh
sentience
dear
means...
Lord! just throw on the season 2 Next Generation when Data is put on trial. What's that?
Do the Tribbles have a soul? I don't know if I do. I don't know if he does. No.
You see Picard defending Tribble rights now in a legal case.
I like that.
What is he, Commander? Yeah, What is he? Do you know?
He sits. Okay.
That's hilarious. Well, I can look it up and find that out because I think, there are probably some different definitions, but let's bring that up and see if we know, right? Hold on, it's going to take a minute.
I think sentience is like self-awareness and whatnot, and I think Tribbles are not.
Self-awareness is one of the things.
They're
awareness
just reactive.
Of mortality.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. Intelligence, self-awareness, consciousness.
Okay. So
consciousness, yes. Self-awareness, I don't think so. Like consciousness, because like you got to be awake to be able to eat and stuff like that, right?
How do we know? Because we've never really been able to communicate with them.
I mean, I'm sure that there's a Star Trek novel where there's a Tribble that's the chief engineer, and right, I'm sure there is. So because we get now,
I haven't read all of them, but
there's a freaking Mugato in.
I mean. And Diane Duane's novels has Horta crew member doing all kinds of stuff.
But we established that they're sentient, so
that is true. But I guess my question is, it doesn't seem like we've ever found out. Like we don't know if we can communicate with them or whatever, right? Like maybe these kind of coups that they have are actual language and nobody's analyzed it yet, or maybe they have and they found out it wasn't.
Of course, it's language between them. It's the same way birdsong is language between them. I mean, taking this. The way that Edward is dealing with it as a food source, are they any more or less sentient than chickens? Which of all of the things that we eat is probably the least sentient, I would say.
Well, but you get into this thing of like, what is the line between? I mean, we call it sentience, but what we're really talking about is a certain level where as like humanoid beings, we can communicate with them and have some understanding and they have awareness of what's going on, right? That's really what we're talking about. Yeah. But I don't know if we've ever like seen people really try to communicate with them. They're like, oh, they're cute. Oh, they're a problem. Like we needed, they've always been seen as either cute or a problem, and they've never been seen as a species to communicate with. It seems like.
They always seemed like...
Sorry, I just want to talk about this because it's
Go
funny.
Ahead.
Okay, I'm going to send you this image in Messenger, okay? So you guys, I know this is bad podcasting, but if you guys Google this while we're talking about this, there's a line, there's a billboard that was out there by, the vegan billboard. It was like a vegan thing, and it's like, all animals want to live, where do you draw the line? And it's not on here, this one that I found, where it's got like from the left hand side it's like pet to food. This one's been adapted, it's got like anime characters on it, but there's like a cat, a dog, a couple more dogs, and then a rabbit and a horse, and then chickens and cows and stuff. And it's like, where do you draw the line? And I saw a funny one that somebody wrote over top of it. They just drew a line between the horse and the chicken.
Yeah.
And we're like, here. I draw the line here. It's like, yes, sir, I would draw the line too.
Yes.
I think this does get into something that is important to me as well, because we talk about sentience and, communicating and all of that. But I mean, I know you think it's funny, but I think it brings up a good point because there are certain animals where we're like, we love them and we keep them in our houses, like cats and dogs and things like that. And there are others where it's like, yeah, chickens and cows, it's fine to, eat them and to have, billions of them that you breed just for food. So I think there is an important point there. Now, I don't think I would argue that any of those animals are necessarily quite at the same level that we are, but I think they are deserving of a certain, respect for what they are aware of and I don't know if I'm putting it well, but I mean, animal rights is important for me. Not to the point where I'm not someone that'll be like, I'm going to prevent you from eating chicken or whatever. You could do what you want, I feel, but I think it's important to recognize that there do seem to be characteristics for some of these animals that we can relate to, or where it seems like they are communicating something to us, or they have their own internal lives and things like that. So I think it's tricky to where you find the line, and tribbles tend to be seen as pets or trouble. Like they're going to really be a big problem for you if they overtake things. But I don't know if they've ever been taken seriously, really. And I would love to see them taken seriously.
In terms of where to draw the line, okay. Just looking at that picture, and again, bad podcasting, but you don't need the picture for what I'm about to say. Traditionally speaking, the line is drawn between useful and not. Okay. So a horse is useful in a way other than as meat. Okay. Setting aside, there are cultures that eat horse. Okay. And horses, we know that historically speaking, before they were domesticated and used as beasts of burden, they were eaten. Okay. But
and used for other products like glue and stuff like that, right?
So beasts of burden versus uses as a carcass, to be blunt about it. A dog is useful as a hunting companion, going back to, I mean, if we want to take this all the way back, right? Whereas a sheep is only useful for its wool and its milk, and eventually its meat. But, the line is drawn with really what's the value of this animal alive versus dead, historically speaking and anthropologically speaking. So, and
the line can be drawn different places in different cultures,
certainly.
Right? It might be like,
there are cultures that eat dogs.
And there are cultures that say, no, I will not kill a cow for its meat, like in a lot of parts of India, right? So like the line is drawn in different places and people see it in different ways. But I feel like a lot of times in Star Trek, when we talk about like sentience, we're talking about a particular kind of thing, like are they on our level, right? But they're not necessarily talking about other levels of kind of awareness and treating with respect and all that, which I think would be interesting to see. I was just noticing as I was watching this episode, like tribbles are seen as a menace and to be, dealt with and killed because like, oh, you got to evacuate this whole colony or whatever. And regardless of, what happens in this episode where it's Edward's fault that they breed so quickly, there are things I think that you could see as being problematic for a society and they want to kill them. But if you knew that they were sentient in Star Trek, you'd be like, we need to find another way to do this. But because we haven't established that, it's okay to, get rid of them in a certain way or transport a whole bunch of them to a Klingon ship or something,
where they
right,
will
to
be
be dealt with that way.
Likely.
Or killed, right? I mean, and we're told also that, the Klingons have this war against the Tribbles and they basically kill all of them, right? At some point. Anyway, I just think it's an interesting question that we never really get more on in Star Trek.
I think it's interesting that the discussion that we've like latched onto here is like the food, because I don't think anybody really wants to eat these things. Like they talk about it in the episode, right? That this is just like some throwaway thing that you did. And then they have the commercial at the end. If they didn't have the commercial at the end, I don't even think this would be something that people would talk about, right? Because they have that.
Well, the whole thing is about him manipulating the genetics so they can be used as food.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
so I think that's a central point.
He's trying to find a food source. So we would. But I don't think nobody really wants to talk about eating them, right? Just Edward. Edward's the only person that's talking about eating them.
Yeah, and everybody else is like, oh. And I think part of that's because they see them as cute or as pets, and it's like, you're not supposed to. It would be like if someone came into like a conference room and they were like, okay, I found this great new food source. It's cats. And people will be like, no, don't do that. Because there's a line that's drawn there, right? And I think Oh God, I wouldn't. but I mean, I think there is this line that's drawn there, and for them, they're drawing the line because they see the tribbles and they're like, "Oh, they're so cute," and it's like, you think that you've eaten them? Like, what is going on here? So
I think you're forgetting the most important topic to talk about here. Okay, so like this is something in the
yes.
episode. I don't remember characters' names, but when they're sitting at the table. And he's like, I gave one to Eric the other day, whatever the guy's name was, and he ate one. Did Eric know that he was eating a Tribble, or did he just
No,
I think Edward
he was saying no, like Edward made that up.
He made that up.
I read that as he didn't do that, not I didn't know what I was eating.
I think so.
I interpreted that as like thinking about that later on. He's like, I don't know what he's talking about, but maybe Edward actually did feed it to him. And didn't tell him.
I don't know.
Like, that's the important thing here. So,
well, I always thought of tribbles as fuzzy locusts, right? Because they just kind of swarm in, and there's so many of them, and they eat
that might be
everything.
A good analogy.
And if you think of them as furry locusts, then the issue of whether or not they're sentient ceases to exist, because I don't think anybody thinks locusts are sentient.
Yeah, but you're not supposed to think about that anymore because Edward changed them, and prior to this, they weren't a fuzzy locust. They were just a fuzzy little thing that reproduced at a normal rate.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
So if we're supposed to go on this as like truth and whatnot, then this episode completely changes what a tribble is, right? And the tribbles that we know in the future for going forward are no longer what a tribble actually was.
Okay.
Or it could be different kinds
well, it becomes
of tribbles,
a fuzzy locust.
So.
Yeah. Anyway, it was just a question that came up for me in the episode of, are they sentient? I don't think we've answered that question yet.
I don't think that they are, though. I mean, I think I'm content with my answer.
I think we don't know.
But they're not. So I don't. All they do is eat and breed. Mm-hmm. Even before, they didn't do it fast, but that's all they did before was eat and breed. So, I don't think that they're sentient. They're a pestilence, absolutely.
I'm going to say maybe, and that it would be interesting if they were.
I'm going to say
so. You would like to see a Star Trek novel where there's a Tribble chief engineer.
Sure.
There you go.
Why not? I've had weird stuff.
I don't... yeah. No, I don't think they're any more sentient than... To go back to my chicken analogy, I guess. But...
I mean, but what is it about them that doesn't seem like they're just this furry thing that can't do stuff? I mean, you have like the Medusans that you can't even look at and have to be in like a box, but we think of them as sentient because we can communicate with them, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like we just haven't cracked the code
and the fact
to
that they're
communicate with
actually
tribbles
great
yet.
at like star travel and mapping and...
Yeah, but you only know that because you can communicate with them. If you couldn't communicate with them, you would never know that they were good at
Let's maybe move away. No, let's maybe move away from sentience and talk about the creation of society and culture. Okay, The Medusans have a society and a culture. The Tribbles don't. Yeah. Nor do chickens, nor do cows.
Yeah, that.
That's maybe a different marker.
You haven't read Shakespeare until you've read it in the original Chicken.
And I'm not going to. Because, damn it, I like chicken too much. All things about factory farming being terrible aside, but that's a different issue.
Going interesting place.
Yeah.
Okay. But I mean, you don't see like visible markers of that. But I'm just saying that doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't. But,
no, I mean, they could be on the level of dolphins, and I think there's a lot of argument that pigs are quite intelligent. So, yeah, maybe they are on that level. But if we don't know that, then we don't know that.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we're missing one thing here that about this whole thing. We are at the point where it seems like humans, the Federation, however you want to put it, has basically given up eating actual meat. So I think there's another level here of why the people sitting around that table find it distasteful. Okay. And you'll notice when she steers away from it, the captain says, let's get back to primary food sources, where they're talking about growing things. And if everybody's eating replicated food, then it's not an issue. We know sometime before, what's the episode with the Antikins and the Cele?
Oh, is that Lonely Among Us?
Yeah, sometime before Lonely Among Us, when Riker says, we've stopped enslaving animals for food, that factory farming stops at least. Maybe regular farming probably still continues. There are people who eat meat. We know there are because O'Brien talks about his mother and all that. But
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, she's probably looking at that more as, no, that's just distasteful because of what it is as a living creature.
Yeah, I can see that.
Well, So what are they talking about this food source for? Why are they talking about this food source?
Because that planet's starving.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing about that people, the biggest thing that changed our society was the ability to like store food and whatnot, right? The ability to be able to store food. Because prior to being able to the agricultural revolution was the biggest impact on our society in a whole, because until you could store food, like if you're starving and your planet is starving, you can't sit around and wait for it to grow a field of grain. Right? You need to eat something now.
Go to the next place.
The answer to that is generally animals. Right? You generally eat animals. And that's like why people swear. And that's why humanity can eat.
Yeah, and before that, if there was no food source near where you were, you would just move on to the next place.
Yeah, you just move on and you'd eat what's there.
Yeah, but with storing the food, you would tend to stay in the same place and build your civilization there. Is a big change.
You have to protect your property, and I could talk about this for hours, but that's another podcast.
Oh yeah, that's a whole other topic.
But that is a point. That is a point, because they are talking about yields of crops, and Edward does have an immediate solution, distasteful or not. So.
It's true. So, okay, I just thought it was an interesting thing to think about. I guess maybe we'll see in Strange New Worlds the episode that tells us what tribbles are. Maybe not. Maybe Discovery. But I do have one other question, and something that I noticed the first time and just thought about again. So at one point, Edward's sitting at a table and thinking about this whole Tribble thing, and he has a black badge. Is he part of Section 31?
He has a black badge?
He has a black badge on, yeah.
I didn't notice a black badge, but...
he has a black badge on, and I think, like, at the time, some people were speculating, like, maybe this was, a deliberate thing from Section 31 to try to destroy the Klingon Empire or something. But, it could be a coincidence, but he has a black badge on.
I have to go back and look. It's not lighting. It's not weird lighting.
It's not lighting. Oh. I don't think it's lighting. He has a black badge. Anyway... But if we take that Lucero is kind of retelling it, maybe it's just like a weird detail she wanted to throw in there for them not to look into it more. I don't know. But okay, so
Giorgio does say that's where the freaks are. Yeah.
Well, they're definitely not on the Enterprise, because you got to hide your freaky on the Enterprise.
Apparently.
Right?
At least when you're on duty.
All right. So I had maybe one or two things for canon connections, but anything else we want to talk about for this episode? I know this is a shorter discussion, but I don't think there's too much to talk about. But
I think that so we did talk about how this does seem to feel like it does kind of spit in the face of the previously established continuity.
I wouldn't put it that strongly,
because the Glommer has been established as a natural tribble predator that kept the population under control, right? And to have somebody genetically modify something does not imply that.
Well, especially like 10, 15 years before we
15 minutes before.
Yeah.
So
could be a different species of tribble, but
or it could just be that Edward is that dumb and he's got tribbles that he hasn't fed, so he doesn't realize that they breed so quickly as they're fed.
Maybe.
I don't know. I'm just pulling at straws here.
I think it's fun, and I had fun watching it.
There is a little bit of troubling to me of the idea of introducing the human DNA, and it reminds me.
The funniest line in the episode is like, "What? Eric's DNA would be better."
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, so that is a funny line, because they're all grossed out when they hear it's his, right? His DNA, right? And then it's like, "What? Eric's would be better."
Yeah,
so, whatever name he said.
I know. I can't think of what the guy's name is, but yeah, it reminds me of Jurassic Park. At Jurassic World with the Indominus, right? Because I don't know if they ever say it in the movie, but there is a comment, or there was a discussion prior to it that the Indominus Rex was going to have a little bit of human DNA in it. And, they were so obsessed with thinking that with knowing that they could, they didn't stop to think about if they should.
Well, to me, that doesn't make any sense that this introduction of human DNA would make these tribbles breed faster, because humans don't breed fast.
No.
I don't know, like, that doesn't make any sense.
Crazy stuff happens when you put different kinds of DNA.
That's what he said.
Yeah, I don't know. That's fine, but that just doesn't make any sense to me.
I'm a terrible person, and that just made me think that he was sleeping with the tribbles, but that's me.
What? Okay, I didn't think of that.
Lead balloon.
But no, like,
okay.
I mean, yeah. But I mean, you could take advantage of something that's part of the DNA of a certain species that when it interacts, it can unlock something or do something. I could see that happening. Yeah. Anyway, I guess if we're talking about canon connections, so Iota Geminorum 4 as their homeworld, I think that name got established somewhere else. I was trying to find it out on Memory Alpha, but basically we know what their homeworld is called. Guess that's, well, the Tribbles are the big connection, but anything else you guys wanted to talk about for this one? I know I won't convince Brandon that it's hilarious.
Never.
It's hilarious. Just like you'll never convince me the escape artist is hilarious. Or most of Lower
But
Deck.
look at this. We found
else you wanna
something
talk
actually like interesting to talk about with it, so there you go.
That's what's
I
great
think
about
so.
Star
And
Trek.
you
There's
have-
always interesting stuff to talk about.
There's always something to talk about. And you had a Chrissie's history.
Oh, I do,
corner,
yeah.
right?
Okay. The Johnny Appleseed song. First of all, I hate that song because for some reason, every time I've heard it my entire life, it's in my head for the next week and a half because it's so catchy and happy.
It's kind of catchy.
But
And it's sung by
I
Bing
have never
Crosby,
heard of
and I
this
love
song
how he
before this
sounds.
episode.
count yourself
Okay.
lucky. Okay.
But tell us about
Johnny Appleseed. So this has nothing to do with Tribbles or anything, but it was in the episode, so I'm going to talk about it. So Johnny Appleseed was a real man. His name was John Chapman, and he traveled through the Northwest Territory in the last decade of the 18th century and the beginning of the 19th. So 1790s to like into the 1820s. I think he died in 1840 something. And he planted seeds, and he did go around with a bag full of apple tree seeds and plant them a little less, let's say, casually than he's shown usually, where he's just tossing the seeds on the ground. But here's the thing, okay? Now, did you guys learn about Johnny Appleseed in school at all? No?
I think I did.
Okay.
Maybe it's more
It's an American
thing
thing.
in the U.S., but I wasn't sure if it was something that really
Yeah,
happened.
it's when, and see,
Cool that it was.
that's what I had to look it up.
That's why we have a lot of apple trees? Is that
Almost. Almost. Okay.
the thing? Okay.
So they're intended for two reasons. Okay. First of all, you're talking about the Northwest Territory immediately after the creation of the country. We're in the years just following the ratification of the Constitution. There is a great deal of question as to who owns this territory and who will own this territory and all of that. So there was a company that was running a business out of selling land in what would become Ohio, for the most part Ohio, a little bit of Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, that kind of thing. And it was called the Ohio Company, so easy to remember. And so they had an arrangement that anybody who would willingly stay on 100 acres could have that land if they could prove that they could survive on it after a certain amount of time. Okay. Very similar to what the Homestead Act does after the Civil War. The most famous example of which that everybody knows is the Little House on the Prairie stories. So it's not that Homestead Act, but it's a similar idea. So he planted seeds because he was part of the Swedenborgian Church, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that, but
Borg?
Yeah, Borg. Sounds Swedish. This is not a faith with which I'm familiar. I'm not sure that there's even anybody still practicing. If anybody knows, let me know, because I'm interested in these types of things. But this church forbade grafting plants together because they thought it caused the plants to suffer. So traditionally, you'd take a piece of an apple tree and you'd graft it onto a sapling, and that's how you get whatever apples you want. He couldn't do that, so he plants all these seeds. Okay, so he makes these orchards. He skirts ahead of the colonists, the settlers, and plants these orchards and then sells them to people as they show up in the area, saying, here, one of the ways you can prove up your land is to have trees on it. This land already has trees growing on it, so you can have it if you give me money. He didn't actually own any of the land. That's the American part of it, right? Selling land you don't own. But the other, arguably more important thing was that these trees were not producing apples that you would want to eat. They were producing cider apples. Yeah.
Really?
And because hard cider was a huge part of the frontier diet. Okay. So these trees that he's planting, these are not apples you could just pick off the tree and eat or, make a pie with or put peanut butter on, and all that kind of good stuff you can do with apples.
So he's planning the future of alcohol.
Yeah, but at a time when people were like not bothered by that. And of course, we're not talking about...
People drank a lot in the 19th century as
well. They
right?
did, and it's not as... it was not as heavy alcohol content as we would have. It was more of a, with some things, obviously there's hard liquor, but with hard cider, it's more of, we're going to let this ferment enough that you can, one, make sure that there's no bacteria in it, and two, just a nice little buzz, just a little bit,
Yeah.
But the fact that he used the seeds instead of planting saplings or grafted trees, I don't know much about plants, so if I'm explaining this incorrectly, somebody let me know and correct me. The fact that he had the seeds means that all of these different types of apples had to grow from scratch, as it were. And so you end up with actually different types of apples coming out of that, even though you have similar, seeds coming from the same type of apples, because it developed with the environment and the other ones that it was growing alongside. So, and they're a lot hardier too, because they have to grow up from nothing. So these apples are the kind that eventually became the Red Delicious, which can basically be shipped anywhere, and it's slightly bruised, but it's still edible, right? But but he was planting for cider, and most of the trees that he planted, and the ones that came up with them, were cut down during the Prohibition era, unless they produced sweet, edible apples. So the real guy didn't sing, wanted a drink. There we go.
There we go.
Have you heard Joe Strummer and the Mescaleros' Johnny Appleseed song?
No.
It's a good song.
Okay. I'll have to look it up.
I haven't heard that version.
Yeah. So good.
Okay, this has been Chrissy's Apple History Corner.
Everybody go crack open a apple cider. Alcoholic or not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Preferably alcoholic.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very cool. All right, so Chrissy, where can people find you online when you're not spreading apple seeds all over Michigan?
Yes. We have good apple cider. Good cider. Right. You can find me in the threads for our episodes in the Federation Council Chambers on Facebook. I'm on Twitter at The Goddess Livia. That's TheGoddessLivia, where I tweet about Star Trek history and leftist politics. You can also follow my work in history by liking the Facebook page my fellow historian partner Jason and I run, and that is History with the Szilagys. Szilagys is spelled Szilagys, and there we post interesting history stories and links to our own work on our webpage.
All right. And Brandon, where can people find you when you're not trying to run away from a mountain of tribbles that's about to eat you alive?
Tribbles don't flow like water. Okay? They don't flow like water.
That's true.
You can find me on Twitter at Brandon Matella, where I'm literally tweeting as we speak links to Johnny Appleseed by Joe Strummer and the Mescaleros on Spotify for you guys to go and listen to later on. So you know exactly when we were recording this episode because it is time-stamped on Twitter. You can find me here on the network with a show called Franchise Fatigue, and you can find me over on the Fandom Podcast Network as well as in its own independent feed with a show called Good Evening, an Alfred Hitchcock podcast, where my co-hosts Chris and Tom and I cover Hitch's films in chronological order. And Justin, where can people find you when you're not enjoying a comedic Star Trek episode that you love?
I sure love myself a comedic Star Trek episode. Truthfully, though, I mean, there is a lot of great comedy in Star Trek. It just tends to be embedded in other episodes. But you can find me on Twitter. I'm at TrekFan4747, where I tweet about nothing but Star Trek. And you can find me in our Facebook group, the Federation Council Chambers.
Here on the network, we have a bunch of other shows. We have a show called Franchise Fatigue, as I mentioned. We have Trek Pod, where Tony Robinson discusses behind-the-scenes information with Trek people who have worked on films and movies and TV shows of Star Trek. We have General Quarters, which is a military podcast with Ken Tripp, Abby Ambrose, and Travis Kreisman. Amy Nelson and Patrick Devlin have All Good Things, where they cover all Star Trek. Over on Galaxy Class, a TNG exclusive podcast, we have Rhea Papagiorgio, Kevin Scharf, Amy Nelson, and Joe Keegan. Mickey's Marvels is hosted by Chris Tribuzio, Patrick Devlin, and Casey Pettitt. They talk all things under the Disney umbrella. And Lance Laster and Cavante Chillis discuss Arrow on Always Hold On to Arrow.
Yes, and if you would like to hear any of these episodes early and also get access to some other fun patron-exclusive stuff. Brandon, you guys have a patron-exclusive that is up on our site, isn't there? It's commentaries?
Yeah, Zach and I, we do a monthly commentary for Star Trek episodes, and we rotate through the shows. The last one that we released was the Enterprise episode Regeneration, and our next one is actually going to be the Battle at the Binary Stars.
Yeah, so those are really fun episodes, and you can get access to those for as little as $3 a month through Patreon. If you want to go to the $10 a month level, you can actually get involved in little roundtables that we do, where we talk with our listeners about various and sundry topics of the day. So that's a reason to get in on it, too. The reason we're saying this right now is, of course, we have grown a great deal in the last year, and we're starting to push at the edges of our current podcasting hosting tier on Spreaker. We'll need to increase our storage, and that can be a bit pricey. So if you've ever thought of supporting us before, now's the time.
All right. Thank you. Yep, and you can go to patreon.com/UFPEarth. So thank you very much for tuning into Infinite Diversity. Thank you to our executive producers, the Tribble Masters, Ken Tripp, Tony Robinson, and Zach Moore. And thank you to Zach Tripp for the wonderful theme music and Tony Robinson for the awesome show art. Please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, and please subscribe. If you want to reach out and tell us why I'm right that The Trouble with Edward is hilarious, or you can say I'm wrong and Brandon's right and it's not funny, you can find our network on Twitter at UFP Earth, or our show specifically at IDIC Podcast. And you can also talk about any and all of the UFP podcasts in our Facebook group called the Federation Council Chambers, or you can email us at infinitediversity@ufp.earth.
Chrissy, you didn't answer that. Do you think this is a funny episode?
Yeah.
There you go.
Weird funny. but funny.
Yeah. See? Some of us think it's funny. All right. And yeah, you can email us at infinitediversity@ufp.earth. Please email us. We really don't get many emails these days, but we get lots of stuff on social media.
People don't use email anymore.
Okay. Not as much. So on the next episode, we'll be talking about the next Short Treks episode, Ask Not. Until then, peace and long life.
This has been a production of MTMR Media Works.
Recording.
So recording.
Nom.
Okay.
Cookie Monster, guest host.